My name is Boston, and my favorite hobby is looking at obscure pieces of media. While others my age are busy playing sports or going to parties, I happily spend my 16 years of existence watching rare pieces of media. There's just something about it that always fascinated me. Watching something that probably hasn't seen the light of day in years. Only a handful of people are even aware of its existence, and I'm one of them. I assume this is what urban explorers must feel like going into an abandoned house or mall. Kinda like an urban archaeologist. Forgive me if that sounds pretentious. It's important to me, is what I'm trying to say. I'm an active user of R obscure media. It's one of my favorite subs. It amazes me what people could find with some digging and patience. I think it goes without saying that YouTube is a big place. You could watch video after video 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for the rest of your life until the day you die, and you still would be barely breaking the surface of the labyrinth that is YouTube. Being a practically endless pit of videos, it's safe to say that not all of them reach the surface. Some stay hidden for years before someone happens to stumble upon them. Most of those videos don't get noticed by the YouTube bots or moderators, allowing them to get away with some heinous things. There are some videos that are better left forgotten about. One day, I was browsing the sub like normal. I watched a video of a long forgotten television show from the 90s that looked interesting. I watched a video of public TV show host being harassed by prank callers, which I found hilarious. I refreshed the page to see if there was anything new, and there was. There was a post about a video that looks like a kids show from the early 2000s called Dixon's Laugh Factory. It looks like one of those TV shows that laugh at people falling over, kinda like America's Funniest Home Videos. It seemed harmless enough, but what struck me as odd was that the video wasn't really detailed. Usually the uploader includes a little summary so people know what they're watching, but this video didn't have any. It just had the title, Dixon's Laugh Factory. I have a friend called Dixon. Maybe I'll show him the video. I checked the ops account, which was just a bunch up mess of letters and numbers. It turns out that they've been on here for 6 years, yet this was their only submission. No comments, no about section, nothing. I found that a bit odd, but I didn't think anything of it. I clicked on the video link, which led me to a YouTube Kids channel with the same name as the video. There were 5 videos in total that were 5 minutes long apiece. They were in order between 1 and 5, so I clicked on the first one. A little intro tune came on, which went something like bingo. D-I-X-I-E, D-I-X-I-E, D-I-X-I-E. Get ready for Dixie. The intro music sounded like they were sung by a choir of children. The episode started on an anthropomorphic, snowy owl, who I believe is Dixon. I saw snowy owl in parentheses because it didn't really look like an owl. It kinda looked like Marilyn Manson with a black beak. The way his eyes looked were uncanny, just orange and veiny. They almost looked bloodshot. It was unsettling to look at. I think what made it worse was that it's just staring at the camera, not moving or blinking. It was just staring. I was wearing headphones so I could hear it breathing heavily. If I were a little kid and this came on, I would piss myself. Another thing I didn't like about the character was that it had long, greasy black hair. It went down to his shoulders and looked wrong. I'm not a furry, but I'm pretty sure a fursuit has to at least look a little like the animal it's portraying. But the weirdest thing about it was that it was rather muscular, like really muscular and tall. The opening scene showed Dixon arriving on screen through a little hallway, but it had to bend down through the door frame to get in. Maybe it's the suit's design, but why wouldn't Owl need to be tall and muscular? After a minute of staring, Dixon finally spoke. Hello boys and girls, and welcome to the very first episode of Dixon's Laugh Factory. I'm Dixon, and I'm a snowy owl. I hope you're all ready to laugh because I have some videos I want to show you that are guaranteed to knock your socks off, Dixon said in the most monotone voice I've ever heard. I think he was supposed to act happy and excited because it was a kids show, but it sounded like he was reading a hot damn grocery list. The Owlman started the first video. It was about a woman in an electric wheelchair, the type fat people ride around in at Walmart. She was trying to go up an escalator with her wheelchair, but she fell out. She was rolling down the escalator, but it kept going up. I admit, it made me chuckle a bit. The scene then cut back to Dixon, and he was just staring at the camera. I guess this was the part where he gave his commentary, but he just sat there. I guess he forgot the video ended because he got back to the grove of the episode. I guess she'll learn to use the stairs next time. Oh wait, she can't. Not gonna lie, that made me chuckle too. The next video showed a toddler laying on a couch sleeping. A black and white cat was also on the couch laying next to the baby. I guess either the mom or the dad was recording. Suddenly, the cat threw up on the baby's face, causing him to start crying a little bit. Dixon came back and said his piece, giving the same icy stare to the camera like he did before. Geez, someone changed this kid before grandma starts melting again. Myuu. I was actually starting to like the show. I mean, sure, Dixon's jokes are a little corny and he's creepy to look at, but I can see why some might like it. I mean, if I were a kid when this show was on the air, I would have probably watched it all the time. It has a charm to it that I can't explain. Sure, it's crude, but that's what makes it special. I guess I'm not the only one who thinks like that because over 5,000 people liked the video. Maybe the show still had a fan base. I continued with the rest of the video, but things started to take a turn for the worst. The third video Dixon showed was much different than the other two. This one was a live stream. It showed a black gentleman in the front seat of a car. He was looking out the window at someone or something out of frame. He cleared his throat and began to speak. So right now, I'm at a McDonald's and I see a cop car in front of me with one person inside. I'm gonna kill these pigs today. Watch. Something about that rubbed me the wrong way. This didn't seem appropriate for a kids' TV show. Now, I'm not the one who says what should be allowed and what shouldn't. As long as it's not illegal or hurting anyone, it was fine with me. But even I thought that this wasn't okay. I didn't like where this was going, but as cliche as it sounded, I couldn't click away. I had to see what was going to happen next. The cameraman walked over to the cop car and knocked on the driver's side window. The cop rolled down the window. The cameraman began to speak again. "Excuse me, officer, can you say Mr. Midnight for me real quick, please?" he asked. "Mr. Midnight," the cop replied, confused. "He's the reason why this is gonna happen to you right now," the cameraman said, suddenly retrieving a gun from his waistband and shooting the cop in the head. The cameraman then ran back to his car and drove off. But before he did, he talked to the phone one last time. "I offer him as a sacrifice to you, Midnight. I hope you're pleased." The video cut out and it turned back to Dixon, who was just smiling. He had that same look in his eyes, but he was smiling. "I am," is what he said before the video cut to black. I was left there speechless. This had to be fake. No way was this real. This had to be some edgy art project. YouTube has some of the strictest moderators ever. This video would have been wiped the very second it was uploaded, if it were real. The video wasn't over. There was still 1 minute left. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to turn the video off. I guess I should have listened. The last minute was a news story about a murder that was very similar to the video I just watched. Breaking news today, as a Stockton police officer was gunned down in his patrol car at a McDonald's in a seemingly unprovoked attack. 34-year-old Officer Thomas Jones was eating lunch at this McDonald's when he was suddenly shot and killed in cold blood. No one knows who killed him or why they did it, but the suspect is believed to be at large. Jones was expecting the birth of his daughter in just 2 days, but it looks like the child will grow up without a father. The video ended after that. To the next video that came up was gameplay of some farming game I've never heard of. I closed the browser and just sat there in stunned silence. What the hell did I just get myself into? I was 14 years old when I ran away from home. I took nothing with me. It would only slow me down. Sprinting out the door and across the path, turning out to the pavement of the road of our neighborhood. My father had tried to swing at me to stop me from getting far, but the second I was on the street and my parents were screaming slurs at me, I knew I had already won. My name is Nicole, and this is the day I met a person named simply the Umbrella Man. They'd finally been exposed for the years of abuse. Coming out had been the driving force of my escape. They'd finally shown their true colors, and the scars on my body were going to be proof of their insolence. I wanted to stay to see what they had to say for themselves, but the psychological abuse would have brought me back inside. So I ran. I ran for 5 minutes straight. My body was thin and frail, the way they wanted to be. They'd wanted to keep me forever, a little punching bag that they could make excuses for over again and again. I'd had my knee broken by my father when I was 7. He'd taken a hammer to it for talking back, for telling him I had wanted to take part in the Olympics. A single dream crushed in a moment, and the doctor never doubted it had been an incident at school because I had never told him otherwise. A drunkard and a druggie, that's who I had grown up with. My lungs begged for air as I finally slipped into the broken down bus stop, sitting there, barely breathing in between sobs. Nobody around me heard it, nobody who would have cared, in my mind. The rain began just after, starting as no more than a tickle, before building into a horrific storm that lashed at my face. I tried hiding under the metal bar for sitting, to no avail. The windows had been smashed by youths trying to rebel. I had wanted to be like that once. I held my own against the torrent for a good few minutes. The rain hurt, like 1,000 daggers smashing against my body, each one reminding me of why my parents had held me back in the first place. I was all but ready to go home, to see the carnage. I probably wouldn't have survived. At least, that's the way it had been. Fully soaked, I was ready to drown, but that was never the way it was going to go. Suddenly, the rain stopped at least. That's what had been in my mind. It was only when I looked up and saw the looming shadow of another person sitting above me that I finally felt afraid. From bottom to top, he was wearing a clashing sight. His shoes were dirty and cobbled. the rain splashing around them as they tapped a tune. He wore no socks. Instead, I saw the skin go into the shoe, uncomfortably tucked like the shoe was too small. He wore shorts that would be more fitting for a summer breeze. Instead, in the dead of a thunderstorm, not even the hair on them was sticking up. I didn't see what else he was wearing, save the large black raincoat that covered everything else, up to his neck where the hood was pulled over to hide the hair. What was curious was the large blue umbrella, which the rain beat senseless and showed no give, like it was made of concrete. When he realized what was shivering below his feet, he finally looked down, and inside the hood was a beard that connected to a mustache that I swore looked way too familiar. I put my head down, covering it with my hands, like that was going to do anything. "Hello, Nicole." Immediately, my eyes widened, and I looked up again to finally look into his eyes. I got lost in them, big brown eyes, friendly and inviting, accepting, like he was going to tell me everything was okay without ever moving his lips. Of course, I had bigger issues. You know my name?" "I do," he replied softly. His voice, I couldn't describe the way it spoke, like a beam of sunlight in the darkness, and yet also like a single dragging nail on a chalkboard. "And I know other things too." Who are you?" I asked, shaking, as he stood and crouched to extend his hand to help me up. "I don't know," he replied, almost comically. "Many simple call me the Umbrella Man." Sure enough, I took his hand like he expected, and he held me to my feet. I must have looked a mess, a sniveling child, coated in water from head to toe from having laid down in it. He shook his head, tutting, "You're soaked." I know. Come, walk with me." And then we were walking. I don't know what compelled me to walk with him. Strange danger had been hammered into me over and over again, essentially translating to "don't let others know," but I listened to him. In an instant, he was like an older brother, the kind you'd follow to the end of the earth because you know he just wanted to make you smile. My mind carried me as I followed him, still dripping with raindrops. "Where are we going?" "Home." He must have felt me freeze. "Not your home, Nicole. My home." "Your home?" It's what I said. His voice was soft, vampiric in nature, inviting me to sit on every word, each one a story of its own. "I'm simply showing you what you deserve to see." You said, "You know things." I was still so scared to speak, even if everything he was doing warranted me to trust him. I couldn't find myself doing it just yet. How much?" "I know you're afraid." He was right, and I shifted nervously under his gaze as he looked over, hood still pulled over his ears. "And that you don't know what life holds for you." Yes, it's okay to feel that. I blinked. Why? Why did hearing that from him feel so much different to hearing it from my therapist? Like I could actually trust those words for once. "Many people feel scared, Nicole," the Umbrella Man continued. "You are one of many people in this world who, especially at your age, are forgotten, unaccepted by life because of another person holding you back." I remembered that I wasn't trying to keep up with someone here. He was walking my speed, and even slowed down when I finally revealed the limp that my father had given me. The umbrella he held didn't even feel like protection anymore. It just felt like a roof above my head, housing a loving parental figure. I hadn't felt that, not since I was born. You still care for your parents. He snipped me with that phrase as we turned towards a large highway of road that acted as my back garden. Even after everything they did to you. That wasn't him telling me that. That was him just knowing. Sure enough, Stockholm Syndrome had hit me too hard. I found myself crying at the possibility of losing them. When suddenly, the umbrella man held his umbrella sideways, the action blocking incoming waves of water that soaked only him. I couldn't help myself. I laughed, the tears mixing with the water, and I thought it wasn't like mine. The umbrella man laughed too. It had taken such a simple, involuntarily moment, but I had seen something that I had not expected. The umbrella man was not an alien. He was not a demon, nor an angel, nor a mixture of the pair. He was human, just like me, and evidence piled against him as I continued my walk. He would shift the umbrella from shoulder to shoulder, uncomfortable with the metal bar. Whenever he spoke, he'd pull back his hood slightly to look at me and make sure what he was saying was right. When a large vehicle would drive past with him closer to the road the entire walk up, he'd flinch and walk slightly in the direction away from the road. And yet, whenever I would cry, something would happen that would make me laugh. I would tear up at the thought of what was going to happen to my parents, and his umbrella would drag along the trees and make a strange sound. I'd get ready to sob into the air about what little I could do without them, and a large gust of wind would invert his umbrella, and he'd struggle with it for a second with his tongue out. He made me laugh when I would cry, and it never occurred to me why that was until later on. There was just one thing I didn't understand. When we passed someone else on the street, there was a few. He'd pull his hood over his eyes so that they couldn't see them. The umbrella would go over those people's heads and never hit them, and the second they were behind us, he'd let go of his hood, talking to me kindly once more. It was when the rain became nothing more than a pattering that we turned off the freeway and into a neighborhood I'd seen before. We walked along the cul-de-sac lane up towards a house that I had seen before but never questioned him. We stood at the gate and he finally lowered his umbrella, wrapping it professionally as the sun finally broke the clouds. What are we doing here? The umbrella man smiled warmly and spoke a sentence to me that I would not understand until today. In 10 years, you will be at the happiest point of your life. He didn't speak it as fact, simply prediction, never raising his voice, never changing from the softer tone. You will have exactly what you need to say that all of your heartbreak was worth it. Until that point, keep our meeting a secret, okay? With nothing else to say, I nodded, confused. He left me with one final piece of advice. The storm that brews in your heart could level the shores of the coast. It's up to you to see the lighthouse through the clouds. I heard the door unlock to the house that I was stood in front of, and my head swiveled to see my grandmother come out of the door. Nicole! I turned back, ready to say goodbye to the umbrella man, and saw he was gone. No longer there. I think I noticed him walk up the street, but I couldn't be sure as my grandmother tackled me into a hug, crying into my ear about how sorry she was. Sure enough, it's been 10 years, and I am the happiest I've ever been. After everything that had happened, my parents were put behind bars. They still serve time for the child abuse to this day. My grandmother and grandfather raised me acceptingly and lovingly, doing everything they could to train me for my life ahead. I finished school with the grades I wanted, moved on to college, finished that too, met the love of my life in university, a woman, and a perfect woman at that, and got married 3 years after. We are expecting our first child in April through artificial insemination. I wish I could name them after the Umbrella Man. I never did see him after that. Life had only looked up because he was the one to find me. Sometimes I ponder, late at night, what would have happened if he'd never found me? Would I survive? Would have I ever made it past the sign of my neighborhood? Was I the only person he ever helped? The term, "it gets better," it never appealed to me. To go from the lowest point of my life to the highest of highs, it was a miracle. But I will say something. At least I was able to take flight. At least I was able to make it to that bus stop where I had wanted to wait and possibly die just to get out of the iron grip of my parents. But people don't get to just meet the Umbrella Man. Storms don't usually call upon guardian angels. It just happened mine was human, and that those lake brown eyes were so trustworthy.